Hello, everyone, and welcome to the sixth and final lecture of the Exile and Displacement lecture series, Lecture 6, The Last Letter and the Wedding Guest. If you would like to view closed captions, please click the live transcript button on your Zoom toolbar and select Show Subtitle or View Full Transcript. All right, Dr. Abbas, you may proceed.
All right, thank you. I'm going to get this thing out of the way. All right. Honored members of the Broadway community, the purchase community, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's lecture, which is the last lecture of the series that we have presented throughout the semester. And this one is going to be about a memoir that I have written, and it's in two pieces. And so we'll talk about that. And we have here with us today Doreen Rossi from CTS, David Bruel from CTS, and Malik Momo, who's my research assistant who is facilitating this uh, presentation today. So before we proceed, I'd like for us to look at this map of Kashmir, which is in the northern part of Pakistan and India. And at the time of partition, somehow deliberately or undeliberately, the British colonizers left this area of the continent undecided. Whether they were getting their back on the locals, for having gotten them out of the country when they were so comfortable, or whatever the reasons were. So it's been since 47, it's been more than 65 to 70 years, that both the countries, Pakistan and India, are fighting over Kashmir, and both the countries are armed to their teeth in nukes. So over Kashmir. And to be very honest, Pakistan's claim on Kashmir is not valid, because in 1948, after the partition of India into two different countries, Pakistan and India, and then later on, a third unit came out of it, Bangladesh. There was so much looting and plundering going on by the Waziris, who are the present Taliban, that the Pakistani military used to go in to conquer Kashmir. They thought it was very easy. And these men, of course, did get Pakistan, whatever it has of Kashmir, which is called Azad Kashmir. And it's that this whole green area, Gilgit-Baltistan and Azad Kashmir. And Jammu and Kashmir are with India. And then Kashmir has a border with China also, and part of it is with Afghanistan. So I was telling you about this thing that the Waziris came in the present, who are the present Taliban from Waziristan. They started the loot and plunder, and also raping. They raped the nuns in the Baramulla convent, and they could have gone further into Srinagar, but they were so busy looting and plundering that in the meantime, India got its forces in and they took over Kashmir. And not only that, the Maharaja of Kashmir at that time, out of panic, with this loot and plunder, handed over the accession of Kashmir to India, because the deal with the British at that time was that the princely states in India, such as Hyderabad and a lot of other places where there were the Maharajas and Rajas and Nawabs, etc., could choose who they wanted to be with. But it was very difficult, to have these little islands of independent countries. So eventually they all got amalgamated with India. And the Maharaja of Kashmir signed over the document of accession to India. But Pakistan has made such a fuss about Kashmir, and this is only for the Pakistani military to stay in power and enjoy all the resources of the country, that they will not come to a settlement with India on Kashmir. And it's mainly the Pakistani military who are doing it. The Navy and the Air Force are not so involved in it. In fact, one of the air marshals of the Pakistan Air Force, Noor Khan, had been giving interviews on YouTube or other places saying that Pakistan and India have fought 4 wars since their creation in 1947. And all 4 wars have been started by Pakistan. India is not the one that starts the war. And so Noor Khan has been sidetracked. He was just, taken out of the picture, although he was a very patriotic air marshal. He started Pakistan's International Airlines, which was a big investment for Pakistan. He bought the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City for Pakistan and many other things. But he was just, put aside because he was telling the truth. And so now things have gotten to the point where Pakistan has gone broke over Kashmir, and people in Pakistan are already saying, we have lost half the country, that is East Pakistan, to become Bangladesh because of Kashmir. And Pakistan's friends in the UN have told Pakistan that they have no case on Kashmir. But they would like to keep up this whole facade of Kashmir because it gives the military the excuse to be armed to their teeth on the pretext that they're protecting Kashmir. And as a result, Pakistan is a security state, and it is also a rentier state. They have never created any viable products or exports to justify their existence, and they've just been surviving on arms from America. America is the biggest financier of the Pakistan army, and they just sell themselves. The Pakistani army just sell themselves to Saudi Arabia for their security, to UAE for their security. At one time, they sold themselves to the Koreans for their security. So this is all that they know. And now the point has come, they never accounted for all the hardware and military equipment that they were getting from America, because America was just giving it to them. Because you see, because of the situation of Pakistan, you can see it has a border with the Soviet Union on the left, and it has a border on China through the north. So it has been in a very important geopolitical position to sell itself to America. And since 1948, when Pakistan sold itself to America for aid and training, they've been getting millions from America, which they have directly from America to the Pakistan army, which the Pakistan army has never accounted for to the civilian government or to anybody, and nobody knows, what they did with the funds, except, that they, especially the generals, have these very plush lifestyles. But now what has happened is that Pakistan is in default. They don't have the integrity and honesty like Sri Lanka to say that we have defaulted, but Pakistan has defaulted. And IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has gotten very tough with the Pakistan government, the politicians, the bureaucrats, the judiciary, and the military, who have looted and plundered the country. And they're saying, we want to see the books now. Even the military, we want to see the books before we sanction anything to you. And if IMF does not sanction anything to Pakistan, its other friends like China and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and all these places said, we are not helping you until you get, the loan from IMF. And Pakistan is the only country in the developing world, which has taken so many loans from IMF regularly, and from China and Saudi Arabia, always with a begging bowl. And so they're stumped. But it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't matter to the army. It doesn't matter to the politicians. It doesn't matter to the judiciary, because they've got tons of wealth sitting abroad in offshore accounts, in properties in London. And I mean, if they were honest enough, they could buy over Pakistan's debt 10 times over. But why will they? You know, they've just looted the country, and that's what it is. And you know, I've talked about a lot of what Pakistan's situation is and what its creation meant for the people of the region. And now this is the last lecture, and my own life is tied in with Pakistan's history. The personal has become the political and the national and the international. So I'm going to be presenting here my work on my memoir and also a novella that I wrote while I was doing my PhD at the University of Texas at Austin. And it's all about Kashmir and how my own life was affected by the Pakistani military and its doings. So I'll read this article from the Pakistan Times, which, no, not the Pakistan Times, sorry, the Friday Times of Pakistan, which was published on the 2nd of September 2016. And the title of it is The Last Letter. And it says here, Shamim Bernie Abbas revisits her husband's final message written before he died in 1965, a soldier's indictment of Operation Gibraltar. So this was a quixotic adventure of the Pakistani military, especially General Air Marshal Ayub Khan, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, and all these other people. And I'm sharing here with all of us, you know, very primary sources that I have collected for this memoir. And so we'll go through it all. So I'm reading it. For 50 years, I believed my husband had gone missing or was still a prisoner in an Indian jail, as we never got his body back. It was not until April last year in 2015 that I accidentally found a folder of my late husband's letters, close to 100 of which that he had written to me during our 3-year relationship, mainly through correspondence. The uppermost letter in the folder was the one that he wrote last before he crossed the line of control into Indian Kashmir in July 1965. The 8-page letter, painful as it is, also tells me what his mission was and where he was going. I had obliterated all details of the letter from memory as I never reread it. This last letter and the others had traveled with me across the continent for 50 years, wherever I studied or worked, but I never reread them. I was angry with my husband for abandoning my daughter and I, especially as I did not want to have a child right away in our marriage, and even more because he knew that the secret mission that he would be assigned to in Kashmir. He never told me anything about it at all. I write this article as a prelude to a larger memoir project that I'm working on about Operation Gibraltar. During the course of this operation, my husband, Captain Nisar Ahmed, was killed in Indian-held Kashmir on August 13, 1965. My narrative develops from my husband's death in Indian Kashmir, an event that completely transformed my life over the last 50 years and which eventually resulted in a life of exile in the United States for the past 16 years. Captain Nisar Ahmed, my husband, is a national hero in Pakistan. He was assigned to lead Operation Gibraltar, a guerrilla action in Indian Kashmir. This is a disputed region between Pakistan and India since the British partitioned the Indian subcontinent in 1947. The Pakistani military to this day has not owned up to Operation Gibraltar. It's been more than 50 years. As a result, I did not know exactly where my husband was killed and buried. For 50 years, part of me believed that he was missing in action or that perhaps he might even be alive in an Indian prison. I had no closure on my husband's death. In order to deal with the trauma of my husband's death and the pregnancy that I was dealing with, I turned the switch off of any memory of our short-lived marriage. So great was my grief, so great was my anger. However, with support from my family and friends, I rebuilt my life fast. Within weeks of widowhood, I applied for a British Commonwealth scholarship to study for a master's degree in England. I did indeed get one from the University of Leeds. Within 3 years of my widowhood, I was on the path to a successful career as an educator in Pakistan and in international settings. Eventually, I also obtained a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Texas at Austin. That further enhanced my opportunities in life together with my daughter, who is now a successful certified public accountant and works for a Fortune 500 company in the United States. Nevertheless, I did not let go of the anger toward my husband. Despite the fortunate educational opportunities and a cutting edge international career, the ride was bumpy. I had to deal with the militaristic Pakistani establishment and a society directed by patriarchs, foremost among whom were members of my own family. In 1999, I left Pakistan to go into exile in the United States because of a blasphemy fatwa against me by the state establishment there. The discovery of my husband's letter in spring 2015 enabled me to get over my anger, as he too seemed a victim of his circumstances. In his letter, he says, and I'll let Malik read the letter. Malik?
All this time I have hidden certain facts of my work, although you would have had your guesses and fears about it. But there was nothing certain about it for me to tell. Today, when you read this letter, I will be far beyond the reach of time and space. For I have told them that this letter should be posted to you only upon my death, along with the official intimation. But do not worry, love, I am just round the same corner of life, picking up the straws of my spiritual happiness, so that I may build a cozy little haven for us two, a love nest. For then we shall never separate, no moments of decision and indecision. This final bond will be unshakable. My love, on the 3rd of June 1965, I was assigned to Headquarters, 12th Division, on a special duty, i.e. to organize and conduct the triage of certain Azad Kashmir soldiers and Dafa Mujahids. Later, I came to know that I am under a new headquarters set up for this purpose, i.e. HQL of C sub-area Muri, and that I will be required to go into Indian-held Kashmir on a mission to conduct commando actions and organize guerrilla warfare with the help of the locals there. On the 11th of July 1965, the President of Pakistan gave his consent to this plan of operation, i.e. our force shall infiltrate behind enemy lines into the Srinagar area surrounding valleys and carry out commando tasks initially and then organize the locals for guerrilla warfare. We received our final briefing on the night, and with it, our action commenced on the night of the 29th or the 30th of July 1965. However, the night for the raid on targets was appointed on the 7th and 8th night. The area I was assigned was Gulmarg and Patan, where brigade headquarters were located. Although the plan is not entirely according to the principles of an unconventional operation, because this type of warfare has political implications and should never be started according to the conventional military concepts of concentration of deployment in the force. The whole force becomes too vulnerable as it offers an excellent target to enemies' counteraction. These types of wars are very expensive and begin with a basic covert cell that expands in size and activity, first in a cellular form, then when the enemy's resistance wears out, it assumes an overt military shape and maneuver. Knowledge of enemies' moves and actions is of utmost importance to such a force, and equally so is the denial of its own knowledge and information to the enemy. In our case, we failed to acquire the first and did every conceivable thing to ignore the latter. I wish you every happiness and love that I wanted to give. God bless and farewell. We shall meet again beyond the threshold of life, beyond all conflicts of time, wars, prejudices, vanity, jealousy, hatred, sense of right and wrongs, everything that man thinks is important to his worldly existence or name.
Rereading the letters after 50 years was cathartic. Within weeks of reading the quintessential last letter that my husband, Captain Nisar Ahmed, wrote, I was researching at the archives of my alma mater, the University of Texas at Austin. During the course of my subsequent research, I found, among other things, the following. a memoir or field diary written in Urdu by a commando officer who survived Operation Gibraltar. The officer, a commando by the name of Alamgir, it's a pseudonym, writes a field diary of Operation Gibraltar and gives details of my husband's participation in the mission, how he was killed, and where he is buried in village Khag in Kashmir. This is the only reliable account of my husband's death and burial. Commando Alamgir's memoir or field diary gives significant details about the mismanagement of the operation and the political realities of the Kashmiri people who never wanted a Pakistani intervention. The memoir further describes my husband's talents that I never knew about, that he was a masterful tarot reader as well as a singer. I hardly knew the man, as ours was a romance based on letters. Number two, declassified CIA documents in the Lyndon B. Johnson archive in Austin that point to the role of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto at that time in 1965, the foreign minister of Pakistan, and at whose behest Operation Gibraltar was undertaken. It was Bhutto who persuaded Field Marshal Ayub Khan and the Pakistani generals to capture Indian Kashmir. Operation Gibraltar was the Pakistan Army's Bay of Pigs. Later, General Ziaul Haq executed Bhutto when the latter was an elected prime minister. General Ziaul Haq led the successful US intervention against the Soviets in Afghanistan in 1978. Furthermore, I have created a photo archive from personal, official, and internet sources of Captain Nasar Ahmed in the larger historical context of Pakistan's special services groups in Cherat, which was set up by the Americans. I have conducted personal interviews with family members and friends in the US and in Pakistan to inform me of what happened immediately when news of my husband's death was conveyed. I was asleep that night when hell broke loose. My family told me the next morning. My research, in which my students at SUNY Purchase sincerely participated with me, gives great insights into the role of the Pakistani military in Kashmir. American aid given to the army for the Cold War against the Soviets was used to make inroads into Indian Kashmir and Pakistan's elite commando unit that the US set up in Cherat, Pakistan, bordering on Central Asia. This then enabled the US to keep an eye on the Soviets and Communist China. These special services group units were further used in early 1978 to train the Mujahideen, some of whom were precursors of the Taliban, when the US was engaged in the region to oust the Soviets from Afghanistan. The Pakistan Army under Ziaul Haq acted as a US proxy. Bada Bear, the US Air Force facility from which Gary Powers' U-2 plane took off in 1960 and was shot down during a reconnaissance mission over the Soviet Union during Nikita Khrushchev's premiership, was used as a prison by the Mujahideen to hold opponents during the Afghan War in the 1980s. Additionally, I got insights into the nuclearization of South Asia and the current US engagement with the Taliban. All of this fits into the great game in Central Asia, where the key players now are Russia, the US, Great Britain, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and India. Pakistan is a frontline proxy state in the game. As a result, my narrative further addresses great game theories. It is valuable for military studies, strategic studies, and international relations with a focus on South Asia. Principally, it deals with American foreign policy. Thus, the larger narrative that I'm working on is also about the geography of religion as well as a text on post-colonial governance and sustainability. I try to address issues of gender, human rights, and citizenship rights in post-colonial states like Pakistan, India, and Kashmir. Ultimately, though my narrative is primarily a woman's perspective of a militarized post-colonial state where the personal interfaces with the international. So you see, once this article was published in the Friday Times of Pakistan, which is almost the equivalent of the Atlantic in the United States. The Friday Times of Pakistan is a weekly journal which is read all over South Asia, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So what happened was, that the Indian press ran with this article because this was the proof that, Pakistan's military was indeed engaged in Operation Gibraltar, which I said, they had never admitted to. So within a week of the publication of this letter, I mean, this article got published in all the English newspapers in India, you name it, the Hindustan Times, the Times of India, the Hindu, and the bunch of English papers that are published in India. So within a week of the publication of this article in the Pakistan Times, I started getting emails from retired Indian generals who were young officers, majors and captains at the time of Operation Gibraltar. And they sent me their own articles about what they thought of Operation Gibraltar. And in fact, one of the generals asked my permission if he could publish this letter in the Defense Journal of the Indian Army. I said, yes, by all means do it. The truth needs to be said. And most interesting was in 15 or 2016, whatever it was, I was looking for copies of the Urdu Digest in which those articles were published. And UT Austin subscribed to every journal until I think it was 1988 or 89, and then they stopped doing it. And this article had been published later than that. So, but I did not give up the effort. So I sat in the Perry Castaneda library, and there was a sense, and I kept punching the keys on the computer, looking for something, something. My sixth sense was telling me there has to be something here. There has to be something here. I'm not giving up. I'm going to find it. And definitely, I came up with this book in the what do you call it, the uh, section that documents the library. And so I went up and I checked out the book, and I got, it's about a 200-page narrative about how Operation Gibraltar was covered and the incompetence of it. And so what I did was I borrowed the book, and since it was such a rare book, I made copies, photocopies of it. They weren't very good. So I spoke to one of the librarians for Asian studies, and I said, listen, this thing means a lot to me, and I can't get another copy of this. Can you help me with it? She knew me very well, and she said, what we can do, we'll declare it lost, and you will be fined $100 for it. I said, yes, that's agreeable. So, I reached an agreement with Mary, the South Asian librarian. So this is the original book from the University of Texas Library. Then I asked a friend of mine, retired brigadier general, if he could find another copy of the book in Pakistan, because it was published only as 500 copies, and then the press disappeared that had published it. So he tracked down, because he was a military man himself, he tracked down this officer's family, and he had died, and he borrowed another copy of the book from them, saying that he's going to photocopy it and he's going to give it back to them. He never gave it back to them. He sent the book, the copy over to me in Pakistan, in America, through a friend, and told the family that, he had sent it to America because there was a book being written on Operation Gibraltar, and that was it. But, because it's a small, it's a very connected army and people. So we found out the family through other friends, and so they were okay with, with us keeping the book. So I've translated it into English from the Urdu by Dr. Shamim Bernie Abbas. No portion of this translation may be reproduced without prior permission of the translator mentioned above. Page 106 from Commando Alamgir's field diary. Commando Alamgir, which is the alias for Captain Farooq Gulzar, commonly known as Farooq Lala, Lala is a word in Urdu and Punjabi of, somebody who's an older brother. Was a captain in Operation Gibraltar. Farooq Lala survived Operation Gibraltar, and this is his field diary memoir. Farooq retired as a brigadier in the Pakistan Army. He was an officer in Pakistan Special Services Group stationed in Cherat. Farooq Lala died 10 years ago. And, I give the details of the press that published it. So the chapter title, Across the River. This is the chapter from the field diary. This chapter begins with a description of how the commandos crossed the river. The narrative begins here in the voice of Commando Alamgir saying, Ghaffar came back with another soldier, but he could not meet Salahuddin or anyone else. The Indian army with its 2 platoons had occupied our base camp. We only found from the local people that a Pakistani officer and about 10 of his soldiers were killed. The local villagers buried them in their own graveyard. We could not get the officer's name. On return, we found the officer was Bada Bhai. This is what my husband was known as, as the older brother, because, he was very protective of his people and friends. The runaway soldier who was with him reported that on 12th August, news came that the order company of an Indian army platoon was assembling in the jungle of Khag, and that the battalion commander would give orders. On hearing this, Captain Saab, who had just returned from a battle reconnaissance trip, got ready to leave again. He asked every one of us if we would volunteer to go with him. None of us was willing to go. We were all exhausted. We had no idea of the enemy's numbers nor their weapons. After some silence, Captain Saab asked us again who among us wanted to go with him. This time, one soldier and one mujahid raised his hand. Captain Saab told both of them to take a light machine gun and 44 grenades with them. In this period, 5 more soldiers also joined them. After 2 miles, the scouts informed us of the enemy's presence. Captain Saab ordered us to wait and moved forward himself. In a bit, he came back and distributed us into 2 groups. He told each group commander of to move forward, group commander of his location and mission. The first group that I was in had to take a position between the enemy and the road. Our job was to block the enemy supply. The second group was the action group whose commander was Captain Saab himself. This group had to attack the enemy. The third group had to cover the retreat of the first 2 groups, that is, if the enemy was to pursue. This group had to stop the enemy. After giving us these instructions, Captain Saab went away with his group. As they went away, we also took our positions with our with our group. We were only halfway to our positions when we heard the sound of a machine gun. A few seconds later, it seemed as if all the weapons were accumulated in this one place. Cannons and bullets were bursting in the area. Our group commander motioned us to wait. In a bit, instead of going forward, we were ordered to retreat, to not go forward. We were all happy for our own safety to retreat. On his return to the base camp, one of the mudahids told us that except for him, Captain Saab's entire group was martyred. He said that under Captain Saab's leadership, we all got near the target when an Indian sentry opened fire. In return, we fired. Captain Saab took his machine gun to leap toward the enemy, and while running, he fired at the target. He killed the battalion commander with all the officers and the security personnel. In this period, an injured officer who was with the battalion commander with his machine gun emptied his entire magazine firing at Captain Saab. Captain Saab fell. After the news of Captain Saab's shahadat, shahadat is like martyrdom, we slipped through the enemy camp to come back to our base camp to tell everyone what had happened. We all decided to retreat. Through Ghaffar, we found that the villagers buried Bada Bhai Captain Asar and his soldiers with honor in their own graveyard. So this is the the section, which confirms that he really did die and the circumstances under which he died. So my memoir is written in two portions. As I said, uh, this section is called The Wedding Guest. It's a novella that I wrote for my PhD from 85 to 92, and it was only two-thirds done when I had to go back to Pakistan and leave it as it was. Then, in when was it? 1998, when the blasphemy fatwa came, I decided, I'm just going back to America. And I finished this memoir in Austin, Texas. It's a very detailed account of everything that happened in that whole period. Only it's in the third person narrative. It's an omniscient writer, and it's a historical fiction, and but very true to what happened. And so I did not know how to integrate the novella with what I was writing. So as I was preparing for this presentation today, it occurred to me that why don't I, keep the first person narrative and then interpose it with, flashes into what the novella is saying, and build both of them, the the first person narrative and the historical narrative as it happened in real time. And when the center character of the novella was a young woman, but now in the first person, she is an older woman. So this is how we are proceeding. So I'm writing this memoir in the form of a letter. It's an epistolary form, and I give the address for where I live now, Elmsford, which overlooks Battle Hill, the place where the American Civil War was fought. And for me, it's like Kashmir. So I'm sharing and I'm writing letters to my husband. And I intend to write letters to the other characters in the story also, because there are issues with them that need to be clarified. And so I thought the best way is to write letters to everybody. So this one is October 19, 2015, when I started writing. And the first chapter is, my dear Nisar, it just occurred to me as I built this memoir to put down the details of what happened and how it happened, the news of your death. Mummy Zia and I had just come back from Karachi after looking at Najma, Uncle Bernie's sister. Zia was going to England to study at Imperial College in London. He had a British Council scholarship. Mummy and everyone wanted to make sure that Zia was engaged before he went, so that he will not fall into the clutches of some white woman in England. We still hadn't heard from you. I was sad and depressed. Also, somewhat angry with you for leaving me behind and pregnant. That evening, I guess it was an early date in September, I'd gone to the southern market with Mummy to buy some cotton suits for myself from the Hunza Cloth Company, right opposite Baba's La Builder's office. We came back around 8 or so. Poppy Shah, our cousin, was waiting for us in one of the steel chairs with the rattan seats in the concrete courtyard of the Lal Kurti house. He took Mummy and Bapa with him inside the drawing room. Within 5 minutes or so, the three of them came out and told me, we are going to the lawyers. I didn't think there was much to it. In any case, I was tired and sad. I don't recollect if I had dinner or not, but I went to sleep. Next morning, when I woke up, I saw Mummy standing in the doorway. Her face was sad. Have some breakfast, she said. We'll have it in the veranda outside. I came out on the veranda, and Uncle Hanif, our neighbor, stood in the courtyard. We're very sorry, Uncle said. Beji, his mother, came running after Uncle and took him away. I ate my breakfast, perhaps egg and toast, quietly. Yusuf, our cook, brought it for me. Mummy, Baba, and Ria sat around me, all silent. After I finished eating, Ria said to me, Shamim, news has come that Nisar Bhaijan is very seriously injured. I listened quietly. I thought to myself, so what is it if he is injured? At worst, he'll probably be maimed. I'll take care of him. I went inside the bedroom and lay on the bed, my face toward the window. I was thinking of you, Nisar, the Katrina woman, our neighbors. Two of them came and hugged me. For me, Nisar was only injured. Then Masuda came and hugged me. Nisar was only injured. Finally, Zia came and hugged me. He said, Shamim, Nisar Bhai has become a shaheed. He's gone. I was dumbfounded. I did not cry. It all did not make sense. The all relatives started to arrive one after the other. I don't even remember who all came. I was in shock. None of this made any sense. For the next few days, a jeep from the general headquarters would arrive daily with a condolence letter from some bigwig expressing sorrow on about Nisar killed in action, in inverted commas. You know, this is what the Pakistani military said. They never told me where he died, although they knew everything. They were just very nebulous about it, and they said killed in action. I could not make out anything. Sid's brother Iqbal, I remember, who had hosted us in Karachi when we stayed with them during our honeymoon, came in the evening. He was training to be a section officer in Islamabad. I'm so sad, Iqbal said. I could not say anything. Khalda came, my friend came from Lahore, so did her fiancé Jalil. I don't recollect exactly, but her father, Papaji, and Chachi also came. Your uncle wept so much, Auntie Hanif told me. He must cry, Auntie Bernice insisted. She's bottling up her grief, he said. Cry? I simply could not. I had no fear, no tears for you, dear heart. I was in total shock. I only wished I could die. I thought that the Hindu custom of burying widows on the husband's funeral pyre was great. At times I wanted to commit suicide, but I was afraid of what may happen to the child I was carrying. What if they save me? My child may be deformed. I had no wish to live. The first night after your news, Mummy made me sleep with her in the big charpoy with her. I had hardly gone to sleep when I was awakened by Mahmouda, my cousin, saying to Mummy, Hakim's mother says that baby will have to wear a burqa when she comes to Shadra. Mahmouda's body swayed over our charpoy. Shoo, shoo, he's just gone to sleep, Mummy pointed at me. Mahmouda, however, continued, we won't go along with this. Mummy got out of her charpai and took away Mahmouda inside the drawing room. So this is one of the letters that I write to him. And then let me see what else I have. Let me see. All right, they're all here. So the address on this one is Battle Hill, Ellsford, Kashmir, January 23, 2016. My dear Nisar, Happy New Year. A late greeting from the heart. I've been traveling to California and then to St. Louis to see Sherry and the children. It's all been a lot of fun, especially in California with Daisy, Nadia, Zahid, and their two girls. I went to see Bhabhi Razia, whose memory is fading. But when we connected to her at a deep level, her stories of her Nana and Nani were hilarious. The one about the water carriers or the mashkis whom she ordered to cover their faces to move past her as she sat in the courtyard bathing herself, perhaps totally naked. In Punjabi, she would say to the mashki, you see, because in that part of the world, a lot of times you don't get water in the pipes. So you have, these water carriers who bring the water and you store it in containers. In Punjabi, she would say to the mashki, "Muh te palla pa ke lang ja," meaning cover your face and go past me. Then there was the story of Farkhanda, her best friend. Farhanda sat on her bed trying on the new shirts that the tailor had brought. While the tailor waited, Farhanda tried on shirt after shirt and ordered the tailor in Punjabi to move over there, meaning turn your face the other way. Then there was another Farhanda story. Her husband Salim Saab, who was a sessions judge, had to adjourn the court daily so that he could go home to feed one of the daughters. That trip sure was a lot of fun with Radhia's humorous storytelling. She could tell one story after another that made us all laugh. Today it is snowing heavily in the Battle Hill Valley. I'm thinking of you in Kashmir, so far from us, sleeping. Perhaps your valley too gets like this in the winter. The storms there too are like ours. At times I hear some voices. They are of children in my study. There seems to be some activity there. I wake up, but I'm not afraid. They seem like good people. I feel there are people living with me. I don't feel alone and abandoned, as I have felt the whole of last summer, which was so traumatic. This summer is even worse. No stone was unturned to humiliate me, to drive me off purchase. I dug in as I had nowhere to go. It was one of the worst depressions that I went through. Mariam, my friend, had to come from England to keep me company. I went to St. Louis and spent 2.5 weeks with Sherry and the children. Sherry is my daughter. We spent Eid together. I felt quite okay. Sherry and I did a lot of healing. Rita had suggested that I listen to Sherry's story. Sherry told me that during my breast cancer in 1989, when I needed time to deal with my own trauma, she felt abandoned. She felt she had not even a country to go to. And then, there's a description of how my sister and brother-in-law take her in. I told Sherry she had to make her life here in America. There was nothing for her in Pakistan. I did not want her to go through what I had to endure in Pakistan. The continuous patronage of the Pakistani generals looking for male friends or relatives to help me deal with life, manage my houses, manage the CB College professorship, and a host of other things. My own relationship with Bapa itself was a challenge. At every stage, I had to stand up to him. Bapa was my father. These all along was supportive. He's my brother. He helped me to build the Westridge houses. He was always a good friend. He told me recently when Hakim died, how he went on the train with Hakim to look at the Murabba or the farmland that the army gave me in Multan because of your Satara Jurat or the highest gallantry award that was given to you by the Pakistani military. Aziz and I had a long conversation that day, very recently, about how we brought back my Jahez or my trousseau from Cherat. Our Morris Oxford broke down on the way from Cherat. Hakim, Mummy, and Aziz had gone with me to bring back the belongings. I'm not sure if Bapa was with us. Rehana Sarwar and Tahira Muzammil came to meet me in the officers' mess. Colonel Mateen came too. Both Rehana and Tahira wept with me. The bearers served lunch. Colonel Mateen said to me, someone will have to go with you to unlock the house as we had to go in to remove the papers. That's trespass, Hakim said. He's my cousin. Aziz also reminded me of your last visit to us in that Lal Kurti house. Aziz tell me that you were wearing your SSG uniform and that you wore your red beret too. The jeep with the drivers was parked on the road, which was higher than the house. The electricity was out that night. Aziz said he was fascinated with your army jeep, all the lights and fixtures that it had. For the life of me, I don't remember that visit. I don't even remember the date or the month. Since I found your last letter in April 2015, I've made the effort to track down all the relatives who were a part of your life. I tracked up a Farah, our cousin, through Raza Rumi, who I met at Fauzia's place last year, exactly more or less this time. Raza went to HSN College with Farah's sons, Ahmed and Faiz. Then I got in touch with Chidia, our Khala's daughter. Chidia resurrected our Walima reception at the Flashman's Hotel, for which Bhajan Sabit paid, and at which I wore the powder blue Harara suit with the Gokru ka jal. And that I'm wearing in the photograph that we'll show you. And before I knew of our death came, I dreamt that Masuda, our divorced cousin, took my suit away and said, "You don't need to wear this anymore. Did you know that you may die? During our honeymoon, you had spoken about Masuda. I hear that Masuda goes away when married women put henna on the bride's palm. Were you thinking of the same may happen to me should you don't come back from Kashmir?" Zuvia did indeed not ask me to put the henna on her daughter-in-law's hand palm at the Mehndi ceremony early this year in New York. Fauziya laughed when she asked why I did not go to the Mehndi ritual up front. Fauziya, as a happily married woman, was asked, but I was not asked. So this is one letter, and then I deal with my situation at Purchase College, Battle Hill, Emsford, October 18, 2015. My dear Nisar, since I've started writing to you, Purchase College and its politics are on the back burner. I'm no longer intimidated by these purchase wallahs. In fact, at the beginning of the semester, when there was the issue with the distribution of the senior thesis to the Board of Studies, Mark, and I'm using, a different name, started to talk to me in his usual humiliating tone. Look at her, she's not listening. I spontaneously retorted to Mark, and don't you talk to me like that. I think he was taken aback with my tone. He became conciliatory. I'm only trying to help you. I don't need your help, I said. I had had enough of his humiliation in the board of study meetings. This had gone on for the last 2 years, the bunch of them ganging up on me simply because I filed an official complaint of bullying against the then director and the associate dean of the faculty. To add to it all, in May of this year, I was told that the review committee had denied me a full professorship because they could not find external reviewers. I have done all the paperwork to rebut the rejection. I have Eugene Eisner and Joe Fashing assisting me. I'm literally broke, having paid $2,000 in installments to Gene to defend me. However, having reached rock bottom with this lot, I feel I have nothing more to lose. They've done the utmost to destroy me and my professional integrity. I can only come up now. I'm no longer afraid of them as they're terrorized me so much. I'm alone in the area and they know it. Plus, my health is also not very good. For the lack of other options and also because of my age, I just hang in there till as long as I can. I have nowhere else to go. This is a choice I have made, which comes with the advantage. I have my time to myself. I have a life of my own with my friends and colleagues. The downside is the loneliness and at times a fear of being alone. But I have networks like Jessica and her mother who help me out a lot to keep my house going and going. Jessica is former advisee of mine. It's from Jessica is fun as she company. She says, "Professor, you're high maintenance." Yes, I am high maintenance. My household, my garden, and my own personal upkeep. All this is expensive, and at times I feel I'm living beyond my means. I'm barely paying the bill, living from check to check. And yet I can't be thrifty. I'm used to a certain lifestyle, and I can't make a compromise on that. It seems selfish at times to be living just for myself. But so be it. If I can't live for myself now, when will it be? I work hard with my students if it's not the family. The students bring me a sense of accomplishment. I learn a lot from them, their class responses and written work. Though not all, but some write well. And then oral participation is excellent. So this is another section in which I say what I did not know. And indeed, it is in Farooq Lala's memoir that he talks about your death. in detail that you were in charge of a base camp in Kharg. The Indian army had found out about the Pakistani infiltrators and was surrounding their hideouts. That you had just come back from a reconnaissance mission when your men told you that the Indians were camped not far from your base camp. All the men with you were exhausted from the day's mission and did not want to do anything. But you picked up a machine gun and asked for volunteers to go with you. Only one volunteer from the AK forces went with you. Slowly, a few others joined you. One of the survivors who came back reported that while you were firing at the Indians, one of them fired back at you several times, that he saw you fall down. Farooq Lala says that it was the next day that one of the deserters with you reported that you and 8 soldiers who were with you were buried in the local Kashmiri graveyard, and you all were buried with great honor. Now I know that you are indeed killed and that you are buried in a Muslim graveyard in village Kharg. And Shahzada, who was a junior officer with him, was telling other stories about, how they went back and picked up the dead bodies and buried them and all that kind of thing. So there's another section here in which I'm, talking about the politics of the family and whatever and the dramas. And this novella is a narrative of the corruption of the Pakistani military, their wives, and the arrogance of the generals, and everything else, that was happening in the place where we were living, and my relationship with the women that I made. The only interesting thing that I'll read for us here is that Amber, who is the protagonist of this story, was very hopeful that Faiz, her husband, would come back, and people would keep encouraging her, that, oh no, he'll come back, others are coming back, and all that kind of thing. But she, her mother suggested that they go to meet this Sufi mystic who could, he was a clairvoyant and he could, give spiritual messages. Shah Sahib searched, everybody called him Shah Sahib, and he was a Kashmiri Sufi from Kashmir. Shah Sahib searched among his many manuscripts lying around him. He was slow but careful in going through his many folios. Finally, he came up with the manuscript. He searched through it and held a couple of pages of the manuscript to Amber. Shah Sahib asked Amber to say the Fatiha and the Darood, which are prayers and praise of God and the Prophet Muhammad and his family. He asked Amber to open a page in front of her. The page had an Arabic text and a zaicha or a diagram. Shah Sahib studied the chart carefully and then made Amber read the lines that he pointed to her. These were the Urdu translations of the Arabic text, which said, "Ghaib ka ilm ghaib par chhod do, Khuda tumhe iska nemul badal dega." It in English means, leave the mysteries of the unknown to the unknown and God will compensate you. And after that, Amber stopped hoping that Faiz will come back, and she went on with her life. And in September of 1966, Amber flew to England, kissing her daughter goodbye on the steps of the Pakistan International Airlines plane. The plane's flight in the air made Amber feel liberated, relieved. She was exhilarated to leave her troubles behind. What were they all doing who had received the medals with their husbands? She wondered. So this is, just wrapping up everything. And to bring us all into the present, I'll read the epilogue to the memoir. Mansha Khan, who led the mission to Kashmir, became Speaker of the Azad Kashmir Assembly. They all had their agendas. Shamim Alam Khan retired as General and Chief of Army Staff. This was an officer who was with Nisar. Pervez Musharraf is now General and Commander-in-Chief of the Pakistan Army, also the President of Pakistan. The latter two of the 19 Baluch Special Services Group Cherat, they were Faiz's colleagues. They could very well be a part of the story. Pakistan is the United States' key ally in the war against terrorism. Kashmir very much a part of the context. Akbar Hazur Hasnan, who was an ex-army major, insisted that to write about Kashmir, I must write of the present as much as of the past. So this is mostly it. And we'll share some of the photographs with you. Malik, can we do that, please? Okay, so yes, this is me in the Purchase Library, and this photograph was taken by Nancy Kane. Okay, can we move on? Yes, this is my daughter, a childhood photograph, or the author's daughter, Iram. Was taken just before, I think she was about 9 or 10 months old before I went to study in England, and I had to leave her. These are Pakistani soldiers and Indian troops, they're looking, and they're in the process of recovering the dead bodies in the battlefields in 1965. And you can see, how intimate they are with each other, as if, they're supporting each other. And maybe, they're talking about the fact that, this war was so unnecessary. Okay. Next. Yes, this is a photograph of me and my husband, within a month of our marriage, and I'm wearing my wedding suit. Okay, can we move on? Yes, this is the Pakistani armor accompanied by infantry advance in a cloud of dust, during the 65 war. I mean, they were just fighting for nothing. And it was mainly the Pakistani generals who started this war, and they've always been the culprits. Okay. Let's move on. Yes, this is Field Marshal Ayub Khan visits the troops on the front line, during, because when Operation Gibraltar failed, what the Indians did was, they opened a front on the Pakistani border in Lahore, and they started a full-fledged war. I mean, how could these people feel that they're going to infiltrate into their country and the Indians are not going to do anything about it? Okay, can we move on? Yes, this is Ayub Khan announces open hostilities between Pakistan and India in September 1965. I mean, they get on the air, talking about how brave they are and what India has done, and all the lying that they tell the nation. And these are photographs that were published in the article in the Friday Times. So we're just reproducing them here. And yeah, these Pakistani troops on the front line in 1965. Okay. Yes, this is Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who went on to reap a great political rewards from his hawkish stance in the 1965 war. I mean, this was the man who started all this this trouble, he and his foreign secretary Aziz Ahmed. And I feel very sorry for the way Bhutto was executed, but I think he got his karma for all the mischief that he made. And when people asked him, why did you advise Field Marshal Ayub Khan and all the generals to go into Kashmir? He said, I was just trying to bring them down, to make them look stupid. And in the process, he got so many people killed. Okay. That was his. Now, this is a photograph of the Special Services Group in Cherat, all the officers and mainly the officers. And this guy seems, somebody of importance, some general or somebody, that was visiting Cherat. And this is Nisar here in the photograph. on the side. And I got this photograph from the internet. I had to be very savvy about collecting the material because these photographs would come up on the internet and then they would disappear. You couldn't get them. So you immediately had to make copies. And so these are photo exhibits that I attached for my file for the second time I applied for the full professorship. And so, this is uh, the link from which this photo was published. And so this is all the officers and the people at the Special Services Group trained by Americans. Okay. Now, this is very interesting. Kent Regiment of the British Army that was stationed in Cherat since 1861. Cherat was used as a cantonment and sanatorium. And this is from the Pakistan Military Internet Archive. I mean, I got most of these on the internet. So even before the Americans got into it, the British were already using this base, Cherat, where Nisar and the SSG units were living, to spy on the Russians, because the Russians were competitors for hegemony in India. So this whole thing about the Great Game is more than 200 years old, and it still continues because of the vast resources of Central Asia. And we talked about it earlier in my first lecture about, the Great Game and the role of the British and the Russians in it. And also later on, the Americans got into it also because they were the key party, and they were keeping an eye on what the Russians were doing and what China was doing. So I thought, this is a very interesting photograph of these British officers in 1861. They were the leaders of everything. Okay, can we move on? This is a very interesting letter. I think this letter survived because it was somewhere in Nisar's belongings that were sitting in his mother's house or something. Now, this is an order that is issued by George E. Malik, Captain Armor Secretary. And this is for the training of Nisar and another officer from the Special Services Group to train in Alaska for ski training. And I just thought, it's a very telling proof of American involvement in Pakistan, and using the Special Services Group to keep an eye on the Soviets. And as I said, it's a mercenary army. So this is Captain Nisar Ahmed's travel documents to Fort Greely in Alaska for training with the US military, 12 December 1962. And then there's a photograph also of him and the other officer training with an American officer. Can we go to that? Yes, this is not a very good photograph. We tried very hard this morning to make it look better, but I can share the original with everybody here, and the three officers. And I think Nisar has a halo around his head. So essentially, they were using Pakistanis were using American equipment and training to make inroads into Kashmir and into India. Okay. All right. Now this is a proof of the fieldwork I did at the LBJ Johnson archive. And they have a very large archive on Kashmir. And when I presented my credentials to them and told them that, I was a researcher and I wanted to look at the Kashmir files, because one of my mentors at UT Austin, who was a history professor, directed me to it. She said, go there. They've got a lot of material, because another Indian student, a PhD student, got a lot of material on Kashmir from there. So this is a declassified CIA document. It says it here. And this is talking about Sheikh Abdullah and the Kashmir issue. So then there are lots of correspondences and reports about Kashmir. So when I went in and asked, the archivist there that I wanted to see the Kashmir files, they brought in 30 carts of Kashmir materials for me to look at. I just looked at them, skimmed through them real fast, and I just picked up one, which had a lot of files. I said, I just need this, and you can take the others away. It's one of the very fine collections on Kashmir, and CIA keeping a record on everything that goes on in Kashmir between Pakistan and India. Okay, can we move on? Now, this is a photograph of, do you see my cursor? This is Ayub Khan, Field Marshal Ayub Khan sitting in the middle. And on his left is Major Mancha Khan, who was also, a perpetrator of this Kashmir mission because he belonged to the Azad Kashmir forces. And eventually, he just became the speaker of the Azad Kashmir Assembly. He had his own agenda to grind. And they're all sitting there, while they're sending the officers into Kashmir, to perhaps assure death. These fellows are sitting there enjoying drinks. You can see that there. And it's very interesting, when the article in the New York, the Friday Times of Pakistan was published, I sent it to Anwarul Haq, our librarian in the Purchase Library. He looked at our wedding photograph and at Nisar's photograph, and he said, yes, he was also with the Pakistani military at that time, and he was a Bangladeshi, an East Pakistani then in the Pakistani military. And he said, yes, I remember distinctly a man of this description came and we issued a lot of ammunition to him, which was Nisar. So this is these fellows, having a jolly good time, sending these young officers to their death. And there was a great celebration. Bhutto was supposed to come, and there was Qawwali music. I mean, there was a great celebration. They were celebrating. Now, this is a bridge that is commemorated in my husband's memory. It's the president of Azad Kashmir with Army Commandant at inauguration of Nisar Bridge in Azad Kashmir over Neelam River in 1967. So you can see the plaque, where they inaugurated this bridge. Okay. Can we move on? Okay. This is a picture of the bridge, which is not very clear, but this is the bridge. And it's Nisar Bridge over Neelam Valley in Azad Kashmir, Pakistan. So many buildings and universities and what have you are named after Nisar. And it's an irony that his wife and daughter are living in exile. This speaks a lot. Okay. Now, this is another park, a very big park in Karachi, one of the biggest national parks in Karachi, which is named after Nisar. Our daughter, Iram Nisar Tola, alias Sherry, at her father's plaque of Nisar Shaheed Park, named in Captain Nisar's honor in Karachi in Pakistan 2000. Okay. Can we move on? Or that's it?
That's it.
Okay, folks. Right. I think this is what I had to say. Any questions? Ren, are you there? Ren is muted. Can you hear me, Ren? No. All right, folks. Do you all have any questions, input? No? Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I believe that is it. And
That
this
is
lecture 6, The Last Letter and the Wedding Guest, our 6th and final lecture of the Exile and Displacement lecture series here at Purchase College. Thank you so much, Dr. Abbas, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.